I expecting to see in the next Nintendo Direct? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? RogersBase here, and obviously the talk of the town over the course of the last week has been the rumored upcoming Nintendo Direct that's apparently going to close out July. Now, I am recording this on Friday. Lots of things may change. I don't know what's going on with the schedule, but I am planning on uploading this on Monday because I really do think that if we are going to get a Nintendo Direct in July, they're probably going to announce it on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I don't see them waiting until the 31st to do it. I think it's going to be happening any day now. And this is really weird considering we just got that Pokemon Presents 2. I would have assumed that they would want to get ahead of that and do the Nintendo Direct then, but you know what? This is Nintendo we're talking about, and they play by their own rules. So I have a lot of things I want to discuss and a lot of things I'm expecting to see in this Direct, but I do think it's important to note that, again, I am recording this before the actual announcement of the Direct. So I don't know whether it's going to be a general Direct or a partner showcase or maybe even an Indie World presentation. I don't think it's an Indie World because, as you'll find out during this video, there is a lot of stuff they still have to give us information on. I do think it's going to either be a big general Direct or a pretty chunky partner showcase, but either way, a lot of the things I'm talking about here I think are going to relate no matter what type of Direct it is. So let's get started. So before I get into my first party Nintendo predictions, I actually want to kick things off by talking about my third party game predictions, because I do think a giant portion of this Direct is going to be focused on third-party support. Not only do we need to find out more information and release dates for a lot of those third-party games that were shown in that first Switch 2 presentation, but there have been so many rumors swirling around over the course of the last few months, and a lot of evidence to back up those rumors that have been coming out over the course of the last even 12 hours. There is so much stuff to go over here, and because there are so many big third-party games that people expect to see coming to Switch 2, I do want to focus on the ones that are either one, going to directly relate to my audience, or the ones that I think are going to make the biggest splash. So I'm not going to be talking about everything here. I'm just going to be talking about the ones that I think are going to be important to you. First and foremost, let's focus on Bandai Namco. Bandai Namco has two big games, one that we already know is coming to Switch 2, and another one that we pretty much know is coming to Switch 2 based on some information we recently got. So first off, Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. I am shocked this still does not have a release date. And something that I haven't really been seeing a lot of people talk about is if you go to the official Tarnished Edition website, they have actually outlined what this game is. Not only is this going to include the base game and the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, there's apparently also some type of new exclusive customization thing being added in terms of torrent and your armor set that has been confirmed on the website. Now, we don't know whether or not this is going to be like a Master Sword and Epona skin or something like that. I would love to see that. I'm pretty sure we got Zelda stuff in Skyrim, so again, I wouldn't be shocked if we got it in something like Elden Ring, because I feel like Skyrim to the first year of Switch is very equivalent to what we're seeing with Elden Ring in the first year of Switch 2. So again, totally expect to see a release date and potentially even a shadow drop for Elden Ring Tarnished Edition during this upcoming Direct. And while we're still on the topic of Bandai Namco, one other thing I want to bring up is that Digimon Time Stranger has apparently been confirmed for a physical Switch 2 release in Europe. There was a leak off of a European database that essentially revealed that a Switch 2 version of the game is coming out. Currently, this game is not announced for Switch 2, and I believe it comes out in October on all the other platforms. So I don't know if we're going to see like the announcement that it's actually coming day and date to Switch 2, or if it's coming as a port a little bit later on, but I do expect to see that announcement during this Direct as well. Another big third party that I think is going to have a strong presence during this Direct is Sega Atlas. Sega and Atlas have been cranking out Switch 2 games. We already have Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, Sonic and Shadow Generations, Raidou Remastered, Puyo Puyo Tetris. The list goes on, and I think we're going to get two more games added to that list. One is the much rumored port of Metaphor ReFantazio. I am hoping and praying that this is true, mainly due to the fact that I loved what I played of that game, but I lost my 10 hours in save file off of my Steam cloud when I was playing between my Steam Deck and my PC. Had to replay the game, and then my save file got corrupted on my PC, and I was like, oh my god, and I haven't gone back to it. So I love what I played, but I'm pretty much waiting for a Switch 2 edition to pick it back up again. So again, I'm hoping this ends up being the case. And the other one that's obviously heavily rumored and would make a lot of sense here is Persona 3 Reload. That game was critically acclaimed last year. Persona obviously has a huge presence on Switch already. Would not be surprised to see that announced during this Direct. I also think this Direct is where we're going to see that big rumored PlayStation game coming to Switch 2. Obviously, 2 Directs ago, we got the announcement that Patapon and Hot Shots Golf were coming to Switch. I believe those were published by Bandai Namco instead of PlayStation. But after that happened, a bunch of people were talking about the fact that another big PlayStation franchise was going to be coming to Switch 2. Some people predicted this was going to be Horizon because we got that Lego Horizon game. I really don't think that's going to be the case. Other people are hoping that it's going to be God of War or Astrobot or something like that. I don't think it's anything like that either. However, there is a franchise of PlayStations that just got a release on PS5, and that the first game in that franchise has already been on pretty much every platform, and that game is, of course, Death Stranding. You can literally play Death Stranding on your iPhone. It is on as many platforms as possible. I would be shocked if we don't see the announcement of a Switch 2 version of Death Stranding during this Direct. And while we're on the topic of Kojima games, now seems like a good time to bring up the possibility of some more Metal Gear on Nintendo platforms. Obviously, Konami has their new remake of Snake Eater coming out. I believe it's actually next month, which is crazy. I feel like that game got announced, I forgot it's coming out, and now I'm like super excited to play it. Snake Eater, in my opinion, is one of the best Metal Gear Solid games, if not the best one. I'm super excited to play this remake, and I do feel like Metal Gear Solid Delta, they're going to want to get on as many platforms as possible, and a Switch 2 release just makes sense. Now, I don't necessarily think it's going to be there right at launch, but I think the announcement that it is coming before the end of the year is probably going to happen, and I think if it's going to happen, it would make sense for it to be in this Direct. However, I don't even think that's all in terms of potential Metal Gear announcements. Another thing you got to remember is that when Master Collection Volume 1 first got announced, it got announced during a Nintendo Direct. That is, of course, the collection with Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, Master Collection was heavily rumored earlier this year. I don't blame you if you forgot. It's been a very busy news year for video games, but I feel like that story kind of came and went. I still believe that we are getting Master Collection 2, and I think now would actually be a really good time to do it to sort of back up the hype behind the Snake Eater, remake, Delta, that maybe we get like the release of Master Collection 2, hopefully with Metal Gear Solid 4, and that would be coming to Switch 2. I also feel like the time might be right for that Red Dead Redemption 2 Switch port. Again, the first game did very well on Switch 1. I brought up this prediction on pretty much every single Nintendo Direct prediction video since the Switch 2 was first announced, but I still stand by it. I feel like Red Dead Redemption 2 is most definitely going to be coming to Switch 2 at some point, and so it's only a matter of time for it to get announced in a Direct, and I feel like, you know what? It's an easy win if it ends up getting announced during this one, if I say it here, so I'm bringing it up again. However, the big third-party partner that I think is going to have a massive showcase here at this Direct is, of course, Microsoft and Xbox, right? Like, there are so many Microsoft games that have been heavily rumored to be coming to this platform. Things like Microsoft Flight Simulator, Halo Master Chief Collection, Sea of Thieves. We still don't have a Switch 2 edition of Minecraft. That seems like an easy lock for something that we'll end up seeing here. And of course, the new Call of Duty, right? Call of Duty, we know, is coming to Nintendo Switch 2. It was a huge deal during that giant acquisition merger that Microsoft would have to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms. I believe it's like for the next 5 years. So again, that is a big deal. I feel like Nintendo would definitely want to highlight the fact that you can play the new Call of Duty game on their new platform this holiday season. So again, I think we are absolutely going to be seeing lots of Microsoft games during this presentation, and I do think that Call of Duty is one of them. And since we're on the topic of third-party games, and we already know that a lot of these games take up a lot of space on your Switch 2 storage, considering the fact that many of these are digital key cards, now seems like a very good time to bring up my sponsor for today's video over at AData. Now, as many of you know, I have been traveling a lot over the course of these past few months, and I've been obviously taking my Nintendo Switch 2 with me, but I have a massive digital game library, and a lot of the games on here are, again, third-party games that take up a lot of space. And it's honestly been tough managing which games I want to put on my internal storage and which games I'm going to have to archive. But thankfully, thanks to AData's microSD Express cards, I don't have to worry about that. I can bring my entire library with me wherever my travels take me. Right out of the box, their microSD Express cards are fully compatible with Nintendo Switch 2, and they deliver an insane write speed that is the fastest you're going to find on any microSD XD Express 7.1 card on the market. They are safe, durable, and a reliable way to keep your digital library of games and your game saves available at all times. You can find out more information about ADATA's microSD express cards by visiting their website and clicking the link in my description below and my pinned comment. And I want to give a massive thank you to ADATA, not just for sponsoring today's Switch 2 video, but also providing me with one of these SD cards. Again, I've got my entire library on the go with me. I don't have to archive Yakuza if I want to play Street Fighter. It's been absolutely lovely, so thank you once again. And now, back to my predictions. So we've talked third parties, now let's move on to first party announcements. This is probably what a lot of people are here for, and I'm excited to get started talking about this. Now let's start small. First, I want to talk about Nintendo Switch Online. Now, something I didn't bring up during that third party segment in regards to games that Microsoft might be bringing to Switch 2 is Rare Replay, right? That includes Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, and Perfect Dark. All those games are already on Switch Online. I don't see a world in which Microsoft would bring Rare Replay to Switch 2, as much as I would love that. Like, the fact that I have never actually gone through and played nuts and bolts all the way through would make Rare Replay worth it on Switch 2 for me alone. But again, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Switch Online. And that is because many of you might have missed this story, but about a month ago, Nintendo uploaded a video of Nintendo 64 Switch Online to their YouTube channel, and eagle-eyed viewers noticed in the background of that video the blurred out box arts for Donkey Kong 64, Glover, Forsaken 64, and Super Smash Bros. 64. Now, I don't think Nintendo is going to shadow drop all of these games during this Direct, and I don't even necessarily think all of those games are coming to Nintendo 64 Switch Online, mostly due to the fact that that could just be like a test build of the system, and they threw a bunch of games on there that aren't necessarily going to be coming to the platform. However, there has been some news since I started recording this video, and that's in regards to one of those games, Donkey Kong 64. Christopher Dring, who is the editor-in-chief of Game Business, posted this tweet saying, "Sounds like next week's Nintendo Direct is gonna be a chunky one," alongside a gif of Chunky Kong dancing in Donkey Kong 64. Now, normally I wouldn't read that much into this tease, but this being paired with that news of people finding DK64 on the N64 Online app and the recent release of Donkey Kong Bonanza leads me to believe that I feel Donkey Kong 64 is going to be the shadow drop during this Direct. I think this is the game that gets announced for the service and drops same day as the presentation. Now, again, the reason why I don't think it's something like Pokemon Coliseum, which a lot of people have rumored is going to be the game they're going to shadow drop for the service, is one, due to the fact we already got a GameCube game this month with Super Mario Strikers, and normally they don't drop like two games on the same service in different drops during the same month, so I don't think that's going to be the case. Also, why wouldn't that have been in the Pokemon Presents last week if they were going to do that? I guess they did announce the Legend ZA bundle of Switch 2 outside of that, so there is somewhat a precedent for them to announce Pokemon news after the presentation, but I don't know, the timing just seems off to me, and I do feel like with Donkey Kong being in the news still right now, a DK64 drop would make a lot of sense, and I think make a lot of people very happy. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't gotten an NSO drop this month yet for the regular apps that are available on Switch 1. Again, the GameCube app is exclusive to Switch 2. Switch 1 owners are kind of sitting there like, all right, where's my big NSO drop for this month? I think this would be a good way to satiate them. So again, Donkey Kong 64 shadow drop on NSO is my big prediction for Switch Online. Though there is one other thing I want to bring up in relation to Nintendo Switch Online, and that is the recent playtest they did for that new Nintendo Switch Online experience. Now, obviously the people who have participated are not allowed to talk about it. I did not participate, but I also want to stay on Nintendo's good side. If you want to find out more information about that, you can go look at other places. Other people have outlined what this experience or game or whatever this thing is. I want to actually experience it for myself because I haven't been able to get into either of these playtests, and I do feel like them doing another playtest for that service says to me that it's probably coming out very soon. And again, this is a service that's available both on Switch 1 and on Switch 2, so that would be another thing to give to those Switch 1 owners. Speaking of Switch 1 games, that seems like a good jumping off point to talk about the new free upgrades and the new Switch 2 editions that we might see during this Direct. Now, in terms of Switch 2 editions, there is one that I have been shouting from the rooftops that I think we are going to be getting, and that is Pikmin 4. Pikmin 4 is already such a beautiful game, is the best-selling game in the Pikmin franchise, and I still think it's going to be a little while until Pikmin 5, so I feel like a Pikmin 4 Switch 2 edition with mouse mode controls, which would be great to move your little Pikmin around, 4K support, because again, the game already looks gorgeous, let's make it look nicer, and maybe some type of new tacked on like single player experience, maybe that follows Louis' story over the course of Pikmin 4, would be a really nice addition to this year's like layout of Switch 2 games. Again, there's not a lot of other Switch 2 editions coming from first party that we know of beyond Metroid and I believe Kirby, which is in August, so the end of August, and then Pokemon, right? They don't have any other ones outlined for the future. I feel like this would probably be a good time to do it, and I do feel like Pikmin 4 is probably number one on the list. Another one that I feel is a pretty good likelihood of happening, actually there's 4 to be fair. These are all Mario games that I think could get Switch 2 editions. The thing is though, I don't necessarily see any of these games getting announced during this Direct if we are going to get a Mario 40th Anniversary Direct in September. There is a lot of Mario related stuff we still got to find out more news about. DLC for Mario Kart World, right? The upcoming Mario movie sequel and casting news for that. That other one, apparently there's a Donkey Kong movie coming out. That's already in the Mario universe. That could be something they announced there. But I do think there are a lot of possibilities for Mario games getting Switch 2 editions. You know, you've got Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. People have already found out there is sort of like a hidden 60 FPS unlock in there that has to happen. Like, we're probably going to get that either as a Switch 2 edition or a Switch 1 upgrade. Super Mario 3D All-Stars got a patch for Switch 2, despite the fact you cannot buy that game in stores right now. That seems like a lock for a future Switch 2 edition where they just throw Galaxy 2 on there and say, oh, by the way, you can now play all these games 60 FPS 4K. That would be great. Give me my 4K Super Mario Sunshine. I would love that. I've even got my summer shirt on today. So again, I feel like Mario 3D All-Stars getting a Switch 2 edition is a pretty safe bet. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which is the only mainline Mario platformer game that does not already have an update on Switch 2 in some capacity. I feel like that's another one we could probably see here. And then, of course, Super Mario Maker 2, either as a free upgrade or a Switch 2 edition, considering the fact that obviously mouse controls would be perfect for that. They could maybe even tack on like a Mario Paint mode. Maybe they could put on like a new art style like that's Mario Wonder themed, or maybe dip their toes into 3D stuff with like 3D Land and 3D World style courses. Though I do feel like that would maybe be something they would save for a potential Mario Maker 3, because then they could play off the idea of like 3 and 3D. So maybe that won't necessarily be here. I think if any of these have the greatest chance of showing up during this Direct alongside Pikmin, I do feel like it's probably Mario Brothers Wonder or Super Mario 3D All-Stars, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I am in the camp that strongly believes we are definitely getting a 40th Anniversary Direct in September, because there's just too many Mario things that we need to find out more information on right now. And one of those things is Mario Kart World. Now, while I believe the big focus of the Mario Kart World DLC is probably gonna be highlighted in that separate 40th Anniversary Direct, I do see them dropping a couple Mario Kart World related things in this Direct, and that is specifically free DLC. I do not think Nintendo wants to announce their full paid DLC roadmap for Mario Kart World just yet. I think they want to give people a couple things free first before saying, by the way, here's all the extra stuff you gotta buy. Those things, in my mind, include 200cc. I do not think they're going to make you pay for that. I think that's going to be a free upgrade. That is what they did with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That's what I think they're going to do with Mario Kart World. I also think we're going to get new costumes for Donkey Kong and Pauline. Apparently there was artwork already of Pauline in a tourist mode outfit. I feel like that has to happen. And considering the fact Bonanza just came out, I think some type of drop to promote that game with costumes for Donkey Kong and Pauline would make a lot of sense. And I also think they're going to add some quality of life stuff in this free update for Mario Kart World as well. One thing I think they desperately need is a jukebox mode. The music in Mario Kart World is one of the best soundtracks Nintendo has ever put together. It is criminal that you cannot just log into free roam and choose what songs you want to play. I would love to see a jukebox mode. Donkey Kong has one. Why doesn't Mario Kart? And of course, the other thing is more features added to the online play for Mario Kart. This hasn't been a big issue for me. I have not really played a lot of like Mario Kart Grand Prix or versus races online. I just prefer Knockout Tour. But I know there's a lot of people who do not like those intermission courses and want to just be able to play 3-lap Mario Kart races the way they want to play the game. And I do feel like Nintendo is listening in that regard, and I do think they are going to offer some type of option for that. I don't think it's going to be locked behind any paid DLC. I think it's going to be part of a free update. And again, I think that free update might happen during this Direct. And speaking of free updates, I'm going to try to lightning round this because there's still a lot of stuff I got to get through. I feel like if we do get a Switch 2 edition of Pikmin 4. I could also see Pikmin 1+2 and Pikmin 3 Deluxe getting free Switch 1 to Switch 2 upgrades to also add that mouse mode. And I also think the time is right for them to do some type of free upgrade for the Xenoblade games. Now, all the Xenoblade games are obviously available on Switch 1 and on Switch 2, obviously due to the backwards compatibility, but all of these games also have additional big single player things tacked onto them, right? We've got Definitive Edition with Future Connected, we've got Torna with Xenoblade 2, Future Redeemed with Xenoblade 3, and they even added new stuff to Xenoblade Chronicles X. So again, I don't think they're going to add more single player content for any of those games and make them full on Switch 2 editions, but I do believe they know the demand is there for free upgrades to make the games run and look better on Switch 2, and I don't think we're going to be waiting much longer for that. And that'll finally bring me to the big first-party showcases during this Nintendo Direct. Things I absolutely think are going to be a focus from Nintendo and things that I think we're going to get lots of information about. First and foremost, there are two absolute locks. These will definitely be here no matter what, and that is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Both of these were showcased during the Switch 2 presentation. Metroid Prime 4 obviously has been in development a very long time, but now they have already said the game is coming out this year. We are absolutely going to see a release date for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond alongside either a new trailer or new gameplay for that game during this Direct. And I also feel exactly the same way about Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. That is another game that's a huge focus for their holiday. The Hyrule Warriors games traditionally have done quite well, and Age of Imprisonment obviously is building upon the characters we met in Tears of the Kingdom. I know a lot of people are super excited for this, and I feel like considering the fact there's not a new Zelda game this year, like a new mainline Zelda, this is definitely the bone they're throwing to those fans, and I do think the game is going to be really good. I've played a little bit of Age of Calamity on my Switch 2 just to see how it runs, and it runs way nicer, so I feel like I am looking forward to how they're going to change the game up with Age of Imprisonment. And to double down on both of these, we already got ratings on the South Korea classification board for both of these titles, and usually what that means is that a release date announcement is imminent. Obviously, if this Nintendo Direct is happening soon, both of these games and both of their release dates will be shown. Now, even if we get a third of what I've already outlined in this video in terms of third-party support, you know, Switch 2 editions, Nintendo Switch Online stuff, like that will be a really solid Direct if you pair that with release date news for both Metroid and Hyrule Warriors. But there's still so much that Nintendo is sitting on that we already know about. We already got the announcement of Rhythm Heaven Groove. That game is a Switch 1 game, will also be playable on Switch 2. We'll probably have a free upgrade. I don't see a world in which that needs a Switch 2 edition. We already got the announcement of Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, and that other Nintendo Direct. That is probably one that is ripe for a Switch 2 edition. I could see that showing up here. We also got to find out more information about Kirby Air Riders, right? We got that announcement during the Switch 2 presentation. That game is apparently coming out this year. We have not even seen a glimpse of gameplay. Now might be the right time to do it, though you got to remember this is a Sakurai game, and Sakurai likes to show off his stuff separately. I could absolutely see a world in which we get a very, very, very brief gameplay glimpse of Kirby Air Riders with, you know, no release date or anything like that, with the announcement that we will get a Sakurai Presents Kirby Air Riders presentation later in the year, and that's when we end up getting the release date announcement and a full blowout of tons of information on that game. I do still think that game is going to be coming out in 2025, but I believe it's probably going to be slotted in very early December, so they still got a while before they end up having to talk about that game more, and there is a lot of other stuff on the docket they got to talk about first. We could also potentially see some news for Splatoon Raiders. This got announced outside of a Direct, is the first single-player spin-off for Splatoon. That is a huge deal for Nintendo. We still don't even have a release window for that. We at least have a release window for the Dusk Bloods, which is the Nintendo exclusive FromSoft game. Maybe that shows up here, but again, I think they're going to want to wait and show off more of that next year, and I am in the camp that does not believe Splatoon Raiders is a 2025 game. I think this is a summer 2026 game or a spring 2026 game. I would love to be wrong, but I just feel like Splatoon seems like something next year when they've already got so many games still coming out this year. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are expecting there's going to be some type of big holiday game from Nintendo, right? That there's going to be some big blowout must-have game for the holidays that they still haven't announced yet that's going to be shown off during this Direct. And I personally just do not think that is going to happen. Again, we already have Metroid and Zelda and Pokemon and Kirby all coming out slated for this year already. Those are 4 major games, and in addition to a push for Mario Kart World and a continued push for Donkey Kong Bonanza and more Switch 2 editions, I feel like they don't even necessarily need anything else for this holiday season. Again, they already announced the Legend ZA bundle. You pair that with more of the Mario Kart bundles, you're going to sell out store shelves. Why bother putting out another game that might just cannibalize sales of some of these other smaller franchises that you want to see succeed on the system? Things like Metroid. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think there could be at least 1 or 2 big surprise brand new announcements from Nintendo in this Direct. I just don't think those games are going to be coming out this year. So, you know what? Let's actually talk about them. There are 3 franchises in particular that have been swirling around in my head that I want to talk about in terms of the timing potentially being right to announce them. First and foremost, the next Monolith Soft game. I am shocked we still do not know about this. I feel like Xenoblade Chronicles X kind of came and went. They released it this year. Haven't really seen a lot of people talking about it, but we know that Monolith Soft is working on a new IP. We know they assisted in development for a lot of other Switch 2 games, but we also know there are multiple teams there and that they are working on something brand new. Now, again, whether or not this is a completely new IP or some new spin-off of the Xenoblade brand or whatever, I don't know, but I feel like we need to see the Monolith Soft game sooner rather than later, and I think that's niche enough to not cannibalize any other announcements that would be in this Direct. So I do feel like a Monolith Soft game could potentially be here for a release next year. I also think the time might be right for Fire Emblem. There was a LinkedIn posting from someone who works in Japan saying that they worked on the next installment of a storied strategy RPG of Nintendo's. This was a couple months ago. The thing got taken down. I feel like that just lines up perfectly with what we already know regarding Fire Emblem, right? We haven't had a mainline Fire Emblem game since Engage. There was rumors and talks about them sitting on a Genealogy remake. I do not think this is going to be a Genealogy remake. I think this is the next mainline Fire Emblem game. And much like Xenoblade, this is a niche enough franchise where I think its announcement wouldn't overshadow other stuff that's going to be in this Direct, especially if they go, hey, by the way, we're working on Fire Emblem. You're going to find out more information in a Direct later on in the year. And then they end up releasing it like mid next year or even early next year. We don't know how long they've been working on this. Presumably they've been working on this since the release of Engage. And again, that came out a full 2 years ago. And they probably are outsourcing a lot of the development to other people, something like Koei Tecmo or whatever. So again, I feel like the time is kind of right for Fire Emblem, and I think if we're going to get any big Nintendo IP revealed here, that does seem like the one to bet on. With that being said, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. This is the thing that's been buzzing around the rumor mill over the course of the last couple months. People seem to believe that we are going to get the announcement for the next Animal Crossing game during this Direct, and I just want to say right now, as a massive fan of Animal Crossing who wants nothing more than the next mainline Animal Crossing game, I think that is a franchise that is too big that could overshadow other announcements in this Direct. I just don't feel like the time is right to announce Animal Crossing. I think if it's not coming out this holiday season and it ends up coming out at some point late next year, this is just not the place to do that. Animal Crossing is big enough that could get its own Direct, or could just be like the big primary focus of another Nintendo Direct. And considering all the questions we still have about the release schedule this year, it just does not seem to make a lot of sense to slot Animal Crossing in. Would it bring a lot of hype? Absolutely. Would I be thrilled if we see Animal Crossing? Absolutely. Would it break the internet? Maybe. But again, I just don't think the time is right for it as much as I really want to see it. But again, I've been wrong before, and I would be happy to be wrong about this. But that's going to do it for my predictions for this upcoming Nintendo Direct. I didn't want to do too many out there predictions because, again, I just don't think it's going to be one of those kinds of Directs. I think it's going to be a good one, right? With everything that I outlined, that would obviously be a really solid Direct if even half of that comes true. But I don't know. I don't think we're going to be getting a lot of big new first-party announcements, and I think you should kind of set your expectations a little lower because, again, a lot of this is going to be information on stuff we already know about. That's not to say it's not going to be hype. I'll obviously be excited for anything. They could show literally 2 seconds of gameplay for Kirby Air Ride, and you know I'm going to be sitting in my chair going, this was peak! This was one of the best Directs of all time, because I want more information on that game. But again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of big brand new first party announcements, especially when we know there's still so much other stuff coming out later this year. I still think we're going to get a Sakurai Presents for Kirby Air Riders. I still think we're getting that Mario 40th Direct. We're probably still going to get like an indie showcase or a partner showcase later in this year too. And we usually end up getting a big fall direct as well. So I don't necessarily think they need to announce a lot of stuff here first party wise. I do think the focus is going to be mainly on third parties, maybe some upgrades, some cool shadow drops, and maybe one or two big first party announcements. But again, let me know your thoughts and your predictions for this Nintendo Direct down in the comments below. Leave a like on this video if you liked anything I had to say, and please be sure to subscribe because of course the day this Direct drops, I will be live reacting to it. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Nakama!